Hey, everybody, welcome back to another volume, chapter, episode, continuing stream of consciousness video cast. Thanks for joining me today. And joining me today, just back from Princeton University, is my guest, Aidan Walker. Aidan is a author, writer, journalist, and he is well known online as being a meme. Think of him as like a meme anthropologist. Uh, he could be a delineator of memes, a reader of memes. And like you right now, when I first encountered his work over on TikTok, I was like, why in the fuck is somebody doing all this focus on internet memes? And the more I explored and studied what Aidan's approach is, I came to the realization, as he's often touting, that memes are a art form. And like all art in life, memes are a bit of a canary in the coal mine situation where, as you follow memes and their evolution and shifting and transmogrifying on the internet, you start to get a kind of prophetic sense of where things are heading. And this is why I wanted to have him on my cast today. So, he has like I said, a Substack newsletter called How to Do Things with Memes. I'll put that info below in the text here. And let's start. Here's Aidan, or maybe it goes this way. I tried to give a simple explanation in the intro about memes for folks. And you don't have to answer this like I asked you the other day if you were telling a 7-year-old what a meme is. But if you can, great. But for somebody not versed in memes, how would you describe a meme?
So I'd say a meme is a form of art that's on the internet. And I'm very thankful to be here talking with you because I know from your content and your posting that you're an appreciator of all the arts, and I bet, your audience is as well. And I think memes have a place alongside, music, visual art, theater, literature, whatever kind of art. And what distinguishes them is, as we all know, they're on the internet and they use the affordances and play with the constraints of internet content in really interesting ways. And so for me, what a meme kind of is it's something between like a viral trend, but then also it's an artistic form. So like the memes I most studied when I studied this academically were called image macros, where it's a picture and then you put text on top of it. And
Mhm.
everyone uses the same picture, but everybody puts different text on top of it. So for me, it's that structure of there's one common part that we all share, and then there's this individual part that you get to put on and for your own interpretation onto it, put your own joke onto it, make it about your own kind of community. And it's this way of both having something that everyone can look at online that's collective and communal, but then also something that can be really personal and really specific. And it's participative, it's open, there's no single author. And it's been, I'd say, like a 20-year long tradition has developed around this stuff. And so I definitely feel like I'm coming into it. I'm not one of the first people to make memes. I'm already, unearthing the history that's been there.
Great. Good definition. And you've gotten some good traction with yourself as like what I was calling you like a meme expert, but what would you define yourself, a meme professor? Or well, you were just at
Yeah,
Princeton, right? You did a talk,
I
which
was
it
just
blew
at
my mind when,
I was just
not
at
that you
Princeton.
shouldn't have
Yeah.
been there, but I was like, whoa, memes at Princeton. So what how do you define yourself like with memes? Meme artist or
Meme
interpreter?
artist, meme interpreter. I said meme researcher. I
Meme
also do
researcher.
reporting. So I've like reported on internet culture stuff, and I got my start working for Know Your Meme in this field. So that was about kind of tracing where memes come from and
Hmm.
originate. And if,
Hmm.
people have ever been to the site, it's a free encyclopedia of internet culture and content that anybody can look at. Pardon. And we trace back to the origins of every single meme, and then we sort of describe its spread. And so I did that for a lot of years. And then I started posting on Substack and TikTok and stuff. And through someone I met on the internet and then had like a chance connection with in real life as well that he discovered he's like close friends with his close friend is the sister of my former roommate. So it all like worked out and then I
Whoa,
ended up going to Princeton.
whoa, 6 degrees
Um,
of separation.
yeah, and that's I don't know if you've experienced this too, but like posting and being on the internet, you find like it starts to your real life starts to like be touched by it. You run into people, there's synchronicities that happen.
Yes.
That's one of them going to Princeton. And I almost didn't believe it that I got to talk about Skibidi Toilet in front of like a audience at an Ivy League institution.
Okay, I don't I want to come back and a bit to Skibidi Toilet because as I was talking about in the intro to the vid, I had discovered you on TikTok by chance with their algorithm and it finding out what I was into. And the first thing I saw you talking about was Skibidi Toilet. And that was happening right when Pluto had gone into Aquarius. So my mind immediately made this link up because of Pluto being associated with the alimentary system, with shit, toilets, anything to do with expulsion. And then with the planet moving into Aquarius, which is very much like memes, the internet, tech, all of that. I just thought, wow, it's so interesting. This strange meme has appeared. So we'll circle back to that. Um, but I want to give the listener, the watcher, like an example of a meme that probably everyone has seen, and that is the guy with his girlfriend who's walking down the street
Yeah.
and has passed a good-looking woman, and is turning around to see her. And then that to me would be the meme of, I don't know, the decade or something. But do you know much about the history of that meme? Or
Yes, actually. Yeah.
great, good.
That's what I did my master's thesis on. I think without being too arrogant, I think it's just a statement of fact. I might be the world's authority on that meme. I'm not even a big fish in a small pond. I'm like the only fish in a puddle there. But I wrote 100 pages on it.
Okay.
Uh, and I chose to talk about that meme because, as you said, it's kind of the meme of the decade. It's a meme that, people don't know memes. It's a meme that has been everywhere. And in researching it, I found, coverage about it in the New Yorker. It appeared once above the fold in the New York Times. Someone was talking about like a business merger and a company, being distracted by another possibility. And so it's one of these image macro labeling memes where there's an image on the bottom and text on top, and it's the guy walking with his girlfriend, and he's looking at a new option. And each
Hmm.
of these people has like a slot for you to put a word or a piece of text in. And so the original, like most viral example had the guy as the youth, the girlfriend he's with as capitalism, and the new woman walking by as socialism.
Mm,
And this is in 2017. So, right after the Bernie campaign, right as we're sort of, facing this political realignment, you might say.
hmm.
And so I immediately kind of saw that resonance. And it's something I felt with memes, from the very jump. I was like, okay, these can have big ideas in them. Even if it's sort of at the slogan level, like that one, there's big ideas. And so part of my research, what I did was I just sort of gathered up like the 100, 200 most prominent examples of this meme with people putting different words inside. and I sort of categorized by what kinds of words are people putting into these different slots. And then the thing that really fascinated me was it's a picture of a like a street harassment act, pretty much. So it's, very coded negatively. And I think most people seeing it would say, okay, it's infidelity, in a way. He's with his girlfriend, he's looking at
Right.
this woman passing by, he's ogling, he's gross. But there's this tension in that most of the memes I found, like, the youth capitalism, socialism one, the message there and the context is like this is a left-wing account that thinks socialism is good. So if you're doing that socialism good reading, you're also
Mhm.
doing the against the girlfriend reading. And so
Mm,
that tension was interesting. And I was like, okay, here's another complication because 2017 at the same time, kind of Me Too as well.
right.
And memes become all these social forces are playing there. And because they're so multi-authored, it's hard to say like that it means one thing definitively. And the interesting thing for me is to look at how different people have used them because there's been, feminist organizations that have posted this meme and used it in their marketing materials. There's
Yep.
been companies that have used it. The New York Times used it. It gets everywhere. And so studying that, I sort of was like, okay, I think a lot of the accounts are about how memes are just funny or interesting, or if they represent anything, people will be like, oh, it's the alt-right, or something like that. But there's a lot going on, not just we just sort of have the tip of the iceberg a lot of the time. And Distracted
Right.
Boyfriend for me was such a sort of interesting meme to get at, in part because like I was in grad school and working under, academics who knew like so much about everything, but like I'd have to say what Reddit was, which is, fine, but it's sort of I wanted a meme that was very visible and had a
Mhm.
lot of examples to draw from, and that one was the kind of the perfect candidate.
Yeah, that's kind of the gold standard, really, I think, of memes. At least for me, it was seeing it over and over. Um, when it wasn't the the Doge dog, which Elmo Musk appropriated, and then Skibidi Toilet. Now, did Skip? This kind of. I tried to write about Skibidi Toilet after I saw you doing it on talking about it on TikTok because of the astrology association with the cultural shift that is up. And I had to put myself in the shoes of my readers, and I thought this is going to be a stretch for them, like to try to make this link up. Especially given that Skibidi Toilet, if I'm correct, it really appeared as like YouTube videos for kids, right? Didn't it?
Yeah, it's originally a children's show. And I think the point you were making about the astrology connection, it was Pluto and Aquarius being kind of the potty humor
Well, it just the shit. I was
alignment.
like,
And
the shit has arrived for tech.
yeah,
Just very 2 + 2 = 4 take on that transit. Yeah, that's what I
and I
was
think
saying.
I think 2 and 2 is 4 there, and in Skibidi Toilet because it's a kids show, but it's all about this war between the Skibidi toilets, which are human heads inside of a toilet bowl. But the beings they're fighting are these, camera-headed people. So it's like a guy in a suit, and then the head is a surveillance camera. And
Right.
then they're allied with, TV-headed people and speaker-headed people. And so the show, I think, is really about that conflict between, kind of I guess the base, instincts of the Skibidi toilet and the id and that kind of energy of, here's the toilet, and then this like hyper rationalistic, we're gonna build ever better technology to surveil everybody, and we're gonna wear a suit and tie and that kind of vibe. Um,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I was trying to read into it the combination of it starting out for kids, and I can see, why kids would have loved it. They probably are still watching it. Just, bathroom humor, all of that kind of stuff. But I was seeing it as like the this uprising of the chthonic part of human nature. I guess the id would be one way to put it, but that, thonic is sort of like bowels of the earth kind of thing that, would be something more like pagans would work with or
Yeah.
something. And I saw that as we were getting like a prophetic message from Skibidi Toilet about, we've got to get back into like the gnarly parts of our nature, the chthonic parts of our nature to counteract everything, that the tech lord world represents. And then Skibidi Toilet shows it as the robots with the TV heads and stuff. Um, I think I tried. It's weird when you talk about stuff like this with people, especially if they're in like spiritual or metaphysical like cosmologies, like a lot of my readers are, they react poorly to it. I just did a Substack newsletter about getting in touch with your hatred, which
Mm.
would be another kind of component of the chthonic in a way. Because if you're not in touch, at least in my way of thinking, if you have that censored in your nature, you're also cutting off a big degree of power and access to power to mobilize whatever you want to do. So I don't know, that was met with interesting commentary from people when I posted that. But back to Skibidi Toilet. How would you wrap up like with all your research on that? Like how is that poised now? Does it still have as much relevancy and is it as popular? Is it going to be on Netflix? I mean, what's happening?
Yeah, so Skibidi Toilet started, the first episode was like February 2023. And now I'd say there's sort of two phases. So the first phase, which is pretty much what I've covered in my content, goes from that 2023 to like kind of, I'd say like mid 2024. And at that point, it's mostly YouTube shorts. So it's often like a 20, 30-second thing. And
Hmm.
now what the creator, whose name is Dafuk Boom, is doing, is they're like 20, 30 minutes long and they're widescreen format. And it's like very cinematic. It's artistically ambitious, in whatever sense of that word you want to use. And he's like in talks with Michael Bay apparently to turn it into a movie, which, economically makes sense. It's like maybe the most successful YouTube series ever.
That is mind blowing.
Yeah. But I'd say too that to return to like the Yamik and that sort of vibe of it, I think that is kind of what animates Skibidi Toilet. And one thread in my analysis that I didn't sort of pull on as hard as I otherwise might have, in part because that's just sort of not my repertoire of approaches I learned, is that, the toilet is, shame in a way. It's the first thing
Hmm.
kids learn to sort of see as gross, and it's a very intimate, private space. And it's fighting against these cameras, which, exist to expose. You would never want to be filmed in the same context as, what the Skibidi Toilet comes out of.
Right.
And the weird thing is that what you're saying about people not being willing to sort of embrace hate or these more messy, gross emotions, there's many
Hmm.
good reasons for that. But Skibidi Toilet places us as the audience in the body of one of these camera-headed things that is being attacked by the Skibidi Toilets. And so every shot in the series, there's no cuts, it's always continuous. And it's filmed from the head of one of the camera-headed soldiers. So as you're watching, you're here fighting this Yannick, the Skibidi Toilet things are coming at you. And every episode ends either with, the Skibidi Toilet like bludgeoning the camera and then it goes to black and your POV character is dead. Or it ends with, the camera heads win and your camera head looks at another one and he gives you a thumbs up.
Oh,
And there's never
wow.
any words or spoken dialogue. And so Skibidi Toilet places you in that sort of position of the rational trying to fight against the on again. Interestingly enough, in this very sort of these most recent episodes, there's like a new group. Now that it's more cinematic, it's more narrative, but there's like these astro toilets that have come, and now the Skibidi toilets and the camera-headed people are sort of allies. And so maybe there's some sort of union there of the two
Oh,
different sides of us. Like,
I think that covers Skibidi Toilet. And
yeah, I've gained a reputation as the Skibidi guy. It's the only other people studying this in depth is like the Skibidi Toilet fan wiki, and I think they're all 12, like based off the quality of the grammar and spelling. Like I think it's me and a bunch of children are the only like
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I think it's one of the great qualities about being a Sagittarius, which you are, is the constant or the unbroken connection to their childlike side that is, it's not that they're immature, but they have that joie de vivre that kids have and that unfetteredness and not really having to worry about a lot of things. They're just enthused about what they're enthused about, like kids are. Um,
yeah.
so
That's
that I
definitely
can see
me.
that
Yeah.
with you. Huh?
That's definitely me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it and I'm like a part of me is like 6 years old and it's like, wow, explosions, you know.
Well, I once something I always do with folks that I'm talking to, and it's because I love etymology. I always check out people's names that I'm going to be talking to, like what's the etymology of Aidan, right? And you know what it is, don't you?
It's
What it
it's the Celtic, the it's little fire, right?
Little fire.
Yeah.
Yes. Little fire into Skibidi. But that's great because you also have Leo rising, you told me. So that's another fire sign. So the fire's like stoking up here. One of the reasons I wanted to get your take on the kind of gloom and doom that has descended, especially for boomers and I guess folks down below them a rung. And as I said in the intro, like I have a moratorium going on with my friends right now. I cannot hear any MAGA shit. I, I'm in an ostrich thing. I admit it. It's mental hygiene. Um, and I know I'll eventually reemerge. Um,
It's self-care. You have to,
well,
rest from
it is. And I've done 4 years of MAGA, well, as you did. And I feel like I have a vaccine or something in me, but it's just not ready for this new variant. So I'll come back. But for someone, so you're like a Zoomer, right? And for people don't know the numbers, I think that's like what, like 18 to 28 or something, or Zoomers, or you were born, internet was happening, email was happening, social media was kicking off, versus folks like myself, born, and we didn't have that. I mean, TV when I was a kid was like a huge fucking deal. Like the neighbors got a color TV and we were all, down there and stuff. Um, what coming from your perspective, what is your vibe and your take on where we're positioned right now in the US?
So I definitely think like Trump is deeply dangerous and we have this sort of menacing erosion of, the Constitution and, I think there is a legitimate dangerous threat to minorities, to marginalized people, to all of us in any way. And it's compounded with this joining of Trump with the tech power. You saw Musk, Bezos, Zuck at the inauguration, and to me, that's the biggest difference between now and 2017 when
Hmm.
he took power originally. Is that now he's joined with what has over the last 20 years, I think, been this gradually rising power in our society. And I'd say my generation, or I kind of can only speak of my own experience and my friends and people I've been
Yeah,
around
do.
yeah, is that there's sort of two big themes. Is first that everything that I did growing up, as a teenager, for example, I first learned about, the internet through we'd play on an iPod Touch in the back of the school bus, and so we'd play games, we'd look at iFunny, used to be a meme website, social media platforms, and then as you go into early adulthood and teenagerhood, like when you have a crush on someone, you look up their Instagram. When you're thinking about, I want to rebel or like I want to dress a certain way, listen to a certain kind of music, you're finding it through the platforms. And so it's almost like this sort of middleman comes up
Hmm.
between you and the world, between you and other people. And that middlemen are, for now, these sort of corporate surveillance companies that are both positioning themselves between you and others. It's like in a market way, if you're trying to sell a product on Amazon, you have to talk to Amazon first and give them a cut before you meet your buyer. But like in a social sense, if most young people want to date today, you have to go on Tinder and you have to tailor your profile to Tinder. And, it's not just about, hooking up, but like making a deep connection or something,
Hmm.
or like if, me wanting to be creative, I have to go through TikTok to do that. And there's always been intermediating things for everything we do. But it's weird to have them so centralized and so automated and so in the hands of these powerful billionaires. And so that has sort of been my experience is seeing that power now sort of aligned with Trump. And my sort of reason for hope amid all that is we've seen massive change over the last 20 years of the internet, as I'm sure you and everyone listening who's been alive for the past 20 years has experienced, and me as well. And so if there's one thing we know about this place is that it's not stable. It's that the way things are now is not the way they always will be. And then the other thing too is, enough people are fed up, enough people are posting about it. And just at that critical mass, I think something's going to happen. And I think growing up too, like most everyone in my generation has that sense of, not being satisfied with how things are, with these middlemen. And I hope that maybe we can create a new thing that will be between us and the world and run it democratically, because there's no putting the cat back into the bag, but I think there is, a way of choosing a different cat, a cat that's nicer that you can pet and it'll purr instead of like it'll scratch you. Like this metaphor is getting out of hand, but I'll stop talking now. But that's sort of my point of view on
Oh,
that.
I get it. I think after Occupy Wall Street, whatever sort of whatever kind of activism was that they whatever activism was being imagined to take place via cyber, internet, social media means, and what happened there at Occupy, I think that left for maybe your generation, or I can't remember all these Gen X, Gen Z, all. I just think it left a bad taste, and that coupled with what the president at the time did, which was basically, you remember this, I think,
Yeah.
nobody went to jail, nobody was prosecuted that brought all of this on. But people like me, I almost lost my house to foreclosure because, boom, everything was kind of underwater. Um, are you familiar with Adam Curtis, the documentarian from
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So he talks a lot, and this is what I want to get your take on. See if you think he is right on about this. He often repeats this in the documentaries over and over that there is no central narrative or story now for people to kind of congeal around and then have a movement from. So it's just kind of a state of roiling chaos, is the feeling. And then, of course, the internet, social media exacerbates all of that. And then everyone's just feeding in on this chaotic mishmash. We're kind of addicted. And then, like an addict, there's all these, dreams about, or aphorisms about tomorrow I'm going to get clean, or, this or that.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if we're just too into down the rabbit hole with the net, social media. And then my bigger point is there's no grand narrative for people to follow and get behind. And then, you had something like Occupy happen, kind of, like
Yeah.
Curtis said about Occupy, it was insane. There was no one willing to like step up and be like a leader. It was all like, raise your hand if you want to talk, and then we'll shout it out back to you, and that kind of thing. Thoughts on that? If you followed me, you are blowing my mind because I don't know where the fuck I went
I
with that.
I followed, and I'm a big Adam Curtis fan as well. And that's the question I think of all the time. On one level, I rationally track and agree with, each of those premises that Curtis puts forward or that, in your interpretation. And I also think Occupy Wall Street. And for me, the more proximate, closer example is the 2020 George Floyd protests.
Mm,
That you
yes,
do run into this problem with social movements that are decentralized run through the internet where it's like when it comes time to, say negotiate, who's sitting at our end of the table, if it's everybody's posting online, if there isn't one sort of coherent spokesperson, and if they're kind of ephemeral, they're tied to the viral moment. But a part of me like wants to make like a Pascal's wager about it,
what's
where
the
this French mathematician who, like, way back in the 1600s, said, I believe in God because it's like a good bet. Because if God is real and you believe in him, then, you go to heaven.
you're in,
But if God isn't real and you believed in him, you're still dead. But if God is real and you didn't believe in him, then you go to hell. So
right,
from a rational, there's sort of like you have to believe,
right.
um, because the outcome, the only way that your action affects the outcome is if you believe. And I sort of feel that way a little bit about social change too. And that's kind of flimsy. But alongside it, I do see from being like this close in the internet muck and the trenches
Hmm.
and maybe I'm in my own filter bubble and that, I post a video where I'm angry at Peter Thiel and then a couple thousand people comment like, yeah, dude, I feel the same way. And so I have this false impression maybe. But I think people are fed up with this stuff. And there might not be a grand narrative, but that's also good, because all the old stuff is, swept away and you can start anew. And you maybe have to be in this moment of radical doubt where nothing makes sense where I can just be like, okay, I'm just going to keep posting about memes and see what happens. I think there is a certain um, liberty, maybe, in kind of living in this sort of moment. And for me, I think, and people my age, one thing I always say is, all we've got is each other and where we are now and the culture we have, which is often memes and the ways of being together and thinking together that we can do through that are so important and so worthy of respect. And, I don't know what it'll look like a few steps down the road, but I'm like, looking at the tools we have, I'm like, okay, we got to make do with what we have. We have to MacGyver together some,
Hmm.
better social settlement. But
Well,
yeah, I do see the roiling that you mentioned and the
that that
incoherence.
that makes me think of and I'm hoping you can get a little bit specific on this because you wrote the piece the other day on your newsletter on Substack. It was like, don't log off, you were saying,
Yeah.
because, with all the tech pros up there with Trump, all these people, well, I wish there were more, but people are like, I'm getting the fuck off Facebook. I'm dumping Instagram, as punishment to Zuckerberg or Elmo.
Mhm.
So your point on don't log off is like in a nutshell, how do you see that as an activist commitment or alignment? Don't log off.
Yeah, yeah, I wrote that in response to seeing people saying they wanted to log off. And I should preface by saying that if it's like for your mental health, if you, don't want to be exposed to, hate spewed at you, like log off, but there's also, I think, a case to be made that if we're going to get out of this or get somewhere different, we have the tools at our disposal. And however imperfect, the internet is a tool. And posting from my study of memes, I sort of know that this isn't about entertainment when we log on to these platforms. People are being persuaded here. People are finding their identities here. People are growing up here. If you're an older person on any online forum, I think you should post with the awareness that there are children around and you're a model for them. Um, and so understanding that it's more than just entertainment, which I think it's often painted as, there are actual concrete skills that need to be done to make it work. So every online community needs admins. It needs moderators who make sure that, it's a safe and welcoming and functional place, both on sort of a discussion level, but also on a technical level. So if you have like coding skills helping, make
Right.
spaces work. And then, to the extent that now attention is power, if you can attract attention and turn it towards good places, turn it towards productive ends, that's really significant. And I also think I just had this view, like I'm saying, that maybe we're living in a moment of institutions falling down or things not working. That, the last bulwark, I saw a speech by this lady in the German parliament today on TikTok, actually, where she was saying, that one of like, I think the Christian Democratic Union, sort of like center right in Germany, had made a coalition or tried to make a government with the AfD, who are the far right. And she was, I think, like a leftist politician, and she was speaking, and she said, the last firewall is the people. And we've seen these, images of protests and people in Germany turning out onto the streets, which, everyone should do. But if the last firewall is the people, then we need to actually, so we avoid the mistakes of Occupy, have a, disciplined way of organizing. And the way that happens, I think, is by playing these roles in an online community, whether it's, you're a subscriber and you financially support the voices you like, whether you're like an admin or a moderator and you make sure the discussion space is healthy and functional and works and is efficient, whether you are able to, attract eyeballs and visibility and attention, whether you're able to take on like a leadership role or like a advisory role or use your expertise, however, because, this is the firewall and, we need to form it in person, but, the tool we have in front of us, one of them is the internet and internet culture. And like I want to get off X, but Blue Sky is there, Substack is here, although, there's whatever about this platform too. Uh, but that's where people are. And I think it's important to build those skills because no matter what happens, we're going to need
Hmm.
admins, active community members, and leaders, and
Yeah,
attention
that's
givers.
that's a great point, and it relates to some activity I've been doing that's, literal in the sense that I'm, in a small group of people, met them on Substack, and they are, like we met today to just hang out on Zoom. It's a group of people dedicated to kind of escaping from social media and then looking at the importance of like what you're talking about, like have your own website, have someone that has skills as an admin, have someone that can organize this or that, getting back to, meeting people for coffee, um, getting out of the clutches of Meta and Google and all of that. And when I was on there today, I just thought like, God, this just seems like such like this tiny little grain of sand against this huge tidal wave that the whole culture is in now. But
Yeah.
as you know, the longest journey starts with one step.
Yeah.
So I'll put a link up to Seth's group on this page for this video with you so people can check out that. Um, and I was realizing again, how much like an addiction it is.
Mhm.
And we've heard this over and over and over from sociocultural people and all that. So it's kind of become a cliche, but you don't really see it until you try to unravel yourself from it. And then
Yeah.
it brings up memories of when you tried quitting smoking or something like that.
One thing to, yeah, to add on the activist point a little bit
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
there's some like theorists and sort of a lot of like millennial or Zoomer artists sort of talk about this dark forest theory of the internet, where the ideal, the idea is that you sort of have this dark forest, and that's bad in many ways. You could get attacked by a wolf, but it's also good in that you can kind of find your own little part and hide in it, and
Mm,
organize and do stuff.
mm,
And so there's this conscious effort to do things like you're doing with your group, whether it's meeting up on Zoom or in the real world or, in person through like a, whatever that is, or in Discord or these sort of more private or Signal or encrypted platforms. And I think one of the activist patterns we're sort of seeing is where most of the activity goes on there, but you keep an embassy open on like Instagram or something, so new
mm,
people can come and discover you or on TikTok. and you sort of start using these main platforms that are so enshittified and politically noxious strategically rather than being beholden to them,
Right.
realizing too that the value generated by them and the reason people are on there is because of other people. It's not that these guys are geniuses.
Hmm.
They make good products, they have good ideas, sure, they're creative, they have all the servers, but the reason anyone is there is because of other humans and creators and, community that they find. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, asserting that and building it for ourselves, well, I think strategically using the access that there is on the big platforms is what I try to do, I guess.
And I try to explain this to I'll just say boomer friends or peers that the internet isn't going anywhere. Like it's just like bitching about, television or something. Like when people did, it's damaging children's brains and all that stuff when television was out. And television's evolved and changed. It's in a different position, but it's not going anywhere. The internet's not going anywhere. Social media, I can't imagine is going anywhere. Um, One of the guys today at the group meeting had just attended I think it was a month-long kind of get together with Brian Eno,
Ah,
and he was advocating for everyone in the group to go on and into digital detox, he called
mm,
it. And Eno's description from his point of view of what the internet has become now, he called it a realm of obedient shoppers. And I thought, yeah, I can see that. Like if you spend any time on say Instagram now, you're basically in a shopping mall.
I try to do like a solid hour a day where I don't have the phone on me. But in general, it
Great.
is the first thing I look at when I wake up, the
Hmm.
last thing I look at when I go to bed. And
Hmm.
in my own reading, like I love to read, um, I just find myself like reading really old stuff all the time just 'cause I sort of want like the opposite. So like I'll read like I'm rereading like Julius Caesar right now by Shakespeare because I
Awesome.
want something that the phone wasn't even,
Happening.
involved and it
Hmm.
feels alien too because it's the
Hmm.
1600s and it's different
Hmm.
English. So I try to make space mentally that way. But
I,
for me
so
it's I can't imagine my life without it. I can't.
Yes. And I don't like, again, I don't want to hammer on about, I mean, people have heard this stuff for a decade now about the phones and the distraction and the attention spans dying. But you bring something interesting up because um, you bring something interesting up about your own autodidactic way of informing yourself within the culture that you're in. And I remember this when I was a little bit younger than you, way back in the day. And I grew up in suburbia in California. Going to the Kmart was like the big deal, like for the kids to converge down there and shit. And for some reason, things just started clicking in my head. And I barely got out of high school because nothing interested me in there. But I was doing like you're doing. I was reading like D.H. Lawrence, or I was going, to the classics or learning about Billie Holiday, or, in all these different realms of the arts. And do you see other folks your age doing the same thing, like kind of seeing what they've inherited from the arts and the culture that's not, Kim Kardashian, or you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say
great.
the majority even. And I think like what you're saying about Brian Eno saying to do like digital detox because we've all become obedient shoppers. That's not like the Kmart when you're growing up, that's not a new phenomenon, the obedient shopper. And like,
Exactly.
in music, even, when Brian Eno started out, you could say, oh, pop music. it's all consumerist, it's derivative, it's trying to sell you whatever, but then you have avant-garde experimental people working as well. And I'd
Yep.
say looking at memes, there is also those subcultures and those countercultures and those currents, and people can still find them and explore them and experiment with them. To a certain extent, it's like bottlenecked by what the algorithm or sort of the platform censorship will allow. But people
Hmm.
find ways around it. People are, creative. And I think that, we all do live with sort of this constant pressure and everyone's trying to sell you something. But the memes I'm most interested in are the freaky ones, the experimental ones, the ones that sort of, lead people to be, think about the world differently. And even if you consider Skibidi Toilet, which is a mainstream meme, if there ever was one, it's pretty dark and weird and, off-putting to most people. Like it has that sort of energy and vibe to it. And the one thing that I would say is also happening with a lot of young people is this sense that you grow up with the phone and it's these endless, inexhaustible scrolls.
Hmm.
You're never not entertained. It never stops. It does exactly what you ask it to, it endlessly offers. And you have that massive abundance at the same time as, stuff around us feels more and more scarce and grim and dark. So I think for a lot of people, the phone is an escape. It's sort of a place of abundance in a world that doesn't feel abundant. And, they might just want you to shop on it, but, people do tons of other stuff on it. And so that
Hmm.
gives me a little bit of hope too.
That's not, yeah, and it's nice you put that spin on it because the narrative that keeps coming at us is about the toxicity. And then I think that gets eyeballs, readers, clicks, and whatnot. You don't have many people talking about it from the perspective you're presenting here. But I think that's a really important one for people to get because this shit isn't going away.
Yeah.
It's like getting rid of wheels or something on cars. It's the technology that
Yeah.
we're the current version of. So you've got to figure it out within that environment and stuff like that. People in my particular generational group, we're kind of on it. We're moving on out, to that big mystery in the sky or wherever. But that doesn't mean you shit on everything that is coming up, behind you because that's another old trope, the old generation gaps. I remember when the counterculture movement started in the mid 60s, and oh my god, like my dad, he was just certain that the barbarians had breached the gates and stuff, like, so that those stories are as old as time. So, Aidan, I think that's a good spot for us to wrap here. Do you anything else you'd want to like elaborate or share, say, or bring up, understanding that the people watching this on my newsletter on Substack are coming from more of a metaphysical, spiritual, astrological, that I don't like the word new age, but it is in the vernacular. So anything you would say to those folks?
Yeah, what I would say is technology has often been narrated as, a very like STEM left brain kind of thing,
Hmm.
as like, big money investing, entrepreneurs making these moves, someone invents a new computer and it feels a little like the opposite of metaphysics. But in a way that's not like saying, oh, it's the noosphere or whatever.
Hmm.
What makes all this stuff run is human creativity and people making connections and people getting involved and people vibing with one another. And we often, I think, see the container, which is all the tech, all the business, all the platform, all the politics, rather than the content, which is sort of people being creative, people reaching out to each other, people, building one another up, people searching and exploring. And to the extent that, what the internet matters, it matters because of what people put into it. And so I think there is definitely like a big place for the metaphysical sort of side and perspective in tech and in, technology. And if I were to like trend forecast anything for the next 10, 20 years, I think especially as people who grew up with the internet sort of come into their own and have lived their whole spiritual, psychological, personal lives, wrapped up in this thing. Like one line I once used is that it feels like the internet is a tree and I'm like the ivy that's grown up around it.
Hmm.
Um, People are going to sort of have a thirst for that kind of awareness and that kind of knowledge and that kind of way of getting into it. And I think maybe in a minor way, you sort of see that with, how into like the astrology apps people are, even though those I know aren't necessarily the most in-depth or, rigorous kind of thing, but people are often looking to sort of understand what these technologies are doing to them spiritually. It's not ones and zeros to people as we
Hmm.
live it. Something,
Yeah,
stranger and weirder. And yeah.
that's a good point about the say the astrology apps, the quality of them are low quality, but that's always been the case, at least with astrology. I mean, when I was a kid and became interested in this subject, it was just, there were just these little like books about your sun sign, like read about Leo, read about Aries, right? And that's easy to make fun of that stuff, but it primed the pump in my head to get and go more in depth to it,
Yeah.
and just kind of had my mind blown when I saw what was really there, potentially as far as to understanding human nature and our relationship to the cosmos, because that's really what astrology is. If you think about
Yeah.
it, everybody has their way of seeing things, their way of hearing things, their way of seeing their friends, their way of seeing the government. But the great thing about astrology is it makes you lift up, not like in a Jesus sort of way, but into like a bird's eye view kind of way, and see that there's a much bigger world than just your view. There's something as far as being connected to the cosmos. Like Joni Mitchell said, we are
Yeah.
stardust, right?
Yeah. We are
So,
golden. Yeah. Yeah.
and even if astrology is bullshit, I don't think it is, but I know some people think it is. But even if it is, it's great as an exercise in doing what I just talked about, where you get out of yourself and you start to see your place in the bigger scale of being. And
One last thing, if you have a
yes,
second, that I wanted to ask you about is there's these trends on TikTok where people will, say have a video, but it's them just like pulling a tarot card. And they'll say, okay, the fact that the algorithm has brought you to this video, and this will be like a 10-second video of them pulling it, and it'll be the card. They'll be like, this is, this was pulled for you. The algorithm has been the means by which it has found you.
my first reaction to that would be this is just a different structure of divination,
Uh,
right? I mean, if you've ever worked with the I Ching, right, or the tarot, there's the chaos of the shuffle or the toss, and then you get this order with the spread of the cards. And I guess an algorithm could be applied that way, but I think it's just more like the spirit of divination, which is
yeah.
you give yourself up to something to get an insight or a channeling. They're showing a tarot card and they're saying, okay, if you found me here today showing you this card, that's the magic of the algorithm, or is that
Yeah,
it?
or like this is because it's called a for you page. So they'll be like, if it's, I've pulled the 5 of cups, this is for you today as you're scrolling, whatever this means, this is the card that, or
I
it'll sometimes be things that feel more stupid where it'll be like, if you're seeing this, he's gonna text you back.
oh yeah,
The
that's
for
got
you
to be a
page has, yeah.
that that's got to be a big one. Yeah, I don't know. That's trippy. It makes sense that there would be something like that on TikTok. Um, and again, I think it's just another variation of divination.
Yeah.
Um, maybe with a little grift thrown. It depends on their TikTok
Little
shop,
drift,
like
yeah.
what stuff
Yeah.
they're selling. Do you feel it's Trumpified now because some deal was made, or does it even matter? Because the medium's still there.
Yeah. I mean, I was always kind of, I mean, I was sketched out about it like being connected to like the Chinese government. I think kind of in a way, I think I'm a little bit as leery of them as I am of Trump, to be honest. And so it still feels equally scummy, maybe in like a different way. I
But
don't know if that's
I
the
don't you
full
think that
answer,
was
but like,
bullshit though? I mean, MAGA, Meta. God, now I see the confluence. Meta, MAGA,
yeah,
Meta, and Elmo. I mean, they're all data farming, broke
yeah,
selling shit to China, data to China. I,
yeah. I think it's all, connected and it's all bad. But for me, I think like observing some of the power of these things or, knowing just in a way like TikTok, that power, that algorithm, that ability to steer a conversation, it's like a loaded gun, and I'm not one of these like national security hawks that's paranoid or whatever, but I had the same level of, I think, skepticism of Musk owning Twitter as I did of, the ownership structure of TikTok ties back to like an authoritarian government that,
mm,
like censors LGBT stuff online and things like
sure.
that. And so I wasn't like, oh, I wasn't in support of the ban or anything, but I did always feel, there is still I never, or like the CEO of TikTok had this thing where he made a TikTok and he was like, we're standing up for your First Amendment rights. And I was like, no, you're a big company. Like, you know, sure, okay. Like technically that's the constitutional argument, but like we all know that they don't care. Like, yeah,
Well, Aiden, let's stay in touch. I'll see you on Substack, and we'll try to do this again. Do like and you can be like a cultural updater of
for
memes and
sure.
internet culture and stuff like that, if you're down for that.
I'd be honored. Yeah. And see you
Cool.
on Substack too, Frederick.
Yeah. All right. Have a good one, and thanks
Have a
again.
good one. Thank you. Have
Bye
a good
bye.
day. Bye bye.